So these are the six elements. All of them can be learned. All of them are areas that we can be inspired by and grow in. And there is a science and art to it, to each of these areas.
The Posted Careers Podcast. Discussions at the intersection of careers and the future of work. Hosted by Jeffrey Colon.
Sameer, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me.
So your book, it argues that in the AI age, what gives us an edge are the deeply human traits, the soft skills, so to speak, what I actually like to call power skills. Why do you think we've underestimated these qualities when it comes to the conversation around the future of work?
I think in the market right now, there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of uncertainty and rapid change. And it's not that we haven't lived through rapid change in the past. Like, if you remember, there were conversations around when the computer first came in, or when email first became a thing, or when the internet came in. All of these were moments in history where people said everything's going to change forever, right? And, there was a lot of anxiety, which is, are robots going to replace humans? Are humans going to continue in existence or still be relevant? And I think the reality, and to, have some empathy to the situation as well, we're actually at a moment right now where the pace of change is something that is beyond what we can conceive. So it is actually, I mean, in the workplace specifically, when you think about, where AI was headed, when it got commercialized and, in the forms of many like ChatGPT came out in 2022, it has accelerated to a point now where our work, in regardless of the field that you look at, whether you are a banker, whether you're a consultant, whether you're a designer, whether you're a marketer, whether you're in tech, your job changes every single day because you're playing catch up, and the
That's right.
way you do your job changes. And I think all of that, like, I mean, that anxiety really makes people concerned about the future. My book, what it argues is we still stand, the test of time on the most basic human traits that have lived through all of these changes. And some of these are very simple. I'm sure we'll get an opportunity to go through all of them. But the idea is like having belief in yourself, or the belief that you can do things. That is going to stay true regardless of where technology goes. Or the ability to influence people without any direct authority, or the ability to work with others in a way that gets to the shared outcome, is again something that's going to be true regardless of how you do it, whether you do it with technology, without technology. So, yeah, very long answer to your question, but really, I think, it is the most basic human traits that we need to turn back to in times like these when we really don't know where the future is headed.
I love that. So again, soft skills are the hard skills, so to speak, quote unquote, which is what you're which is your hypothesis that you're sort of discussing or pushing for in the book.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely. Because I think our tendency whenever we have change or face change, especially when it comes to technology, is really trying to outpace technology or compete with technology or learn as fast as you can and try to do better. But actually, sometimes it's about really, zooming out and thinking of what makes us truly human. What has made it possible for us to go through all these innovation cycles, or to build whatever we have built, or to work together, really, right? Like shared experiences and how we work with each other. Because ultimately, what any workplace is, it's a collection of individuals who have a shared goal and are trying to achieve that goal. And so when we turn back to what makes us truly human, I think that makes us more powerful, not less powerful in the face of change and technology.
Let's build on that for a second. You said that we're constantly going through change. If we rewind, let's say back to 2008, I remember the conversation on STEM education is the way forward. And of course, I think that's important. We need more engineers in the world. But if we fast forward to now, we sort of see that most people continue to focus on upskilling, coding, data, AI literacy. But you're arguing something a little different, which is we need more of this differentiator in terms of grit and people skills, but we don't learn these things usually, and we're not usually taught them. So how do we cultivate this in education systems in larger organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're asking is a very deep question. This is actually probably what got me started on the book. I met an individual last year, a very accomplished, very smart individual, part of my alumni group. And he reminded me so much of myself when I was graduating from college because I thought that the way to succeed in a career is you build skills, you grow in competence, you keep growing. That's how you get to the top. But guess what? That's not how anyone succeeds in a career. So I started really exploring, like, what are the human traits and skills that you don't quite learn in college but are essential in succeeding. And so I went on this journey of interviewing more than 100 very inspiring individuals who work across industries, from investment banking to management consulting to technology to media and arts, ex-presidents and prime ministers, and asking them about their most pivotal stories and the lessons they've learned on how to succeed. And the same principles came back again and again. And also, these are principles that can be taught. You can learn how to be grittier. You can learn how to deal better with individuals. You can learn how to
That's right.
build belief, even in the face of adversity. So, really, all of these can be learned if they are looked at from the lens of, this capstone to our skills. So imagine, you know, if we would graduate for any undergrad or MBA program, and the last course that you took was how do you step into real life from all of this
Uh,
academia, right? So that's really where this comes in. And these are practical skills that can be learned. So very quickly going over all six, like the thesis that I have from the book is there are six things that make us truly human in the workplace that we need to double down on. Very quickly, the first one is belief. Belief in ourselves, our ability to do things we've never done before, our ability to work with others in a way that we haven't before. And this is also linked to innovation and innovators. The second one is a lot of people around the world work very hard, but hard work alone doesn't quite get you there. It is actually persistence, tenacity, perseverance. It's grit. The third one is, and I've seen this in my time when I was in Silicon Valley. I've seen this in my time in investment banking with governments. That one of the biggest challenges in any workplace is that we start jumping to solutions too quickly without spending the time to really identify what is it that we are solving for.
That's right.
So very clearly articulating the problem and the outcome that you desire. And so many of us don't do this, but it's a superpower. The next one is delivery or execution. So there 90% of conversations in the private sector, in the public sector are spent on ideas. Very little focus on actually implementing that and how do you do it? What is the art and science of implementing an idea through to execution? Through the very, very human ways of doing it. Number five is people, which is, we think of companies as entities. Actually, they're a collection of individuals. How do I influence without authority and convince people that they want to do or are motivated and inspired to do what I want them to do and get to the same outcome? So, shared outcomes and how do you motivate and inspire people? And the last lesson, which is also something that you learn with age, is a lot of life ends up, you know, really being very much shadowed by luck. So luck is fortune, luck is misfortune, and you can do everything in your capacity. And this hits hard because students who are overachievers, the first time you face your biggest setback and you face or something that was not in your control, like the markets, it hits pretty hard because it wasn't your fault. But how you deal with that misfortune or those episodes and moments is what defines, where your career goes or how you succeed. Again, very deeply human on how you respond to luck. So these are the six elements. All of them can be learned. All of them are areas that we can be inspired by and grow in. And there is a science and art to it, to each of these areas.
So belief, grit, articulating the problem, execution, implementation, people, and luck. I like how you drilled down into six. I do agree with you. I think all of us can learn all of these in a sort of growth mindset manner, if we want to label it in that way. Um, the speaking of grit, that's one of the areas that you said was number two on the list. What's a moment in your career that you can share with our listeners and viewers where failure sort of forced you to develop resilience? Which I have to ask you this question because I meet so many people in this day and age. When I do ask them this question, Sameer, they don't have an answer. They're always like, "Oh, I've never really failed," which I would then have to come back and ask them, "Well, have you ever risked in life?" So, I'm just curious on something personal that you have undergone that you talk about in the book.
Yeah, I mean, I have tried multiple startups and failed miserably, which is why I don't run a startup right now. But uh, one of the biggest failures that I've had is, there was is a long time ago when I was an undergrad. I was doing an exchange program at the London School of Economics from Georgetown, and me and a bunch of my friends. This is like back when smartphones weren't very common in the UK. We were trying to launch an app which was a marketplace for students, and the problem we had identified was every single year students are moving out, new students are coming in. Why do we throw all these things away or try to sell them very quickly, whereas new students need exactly the same things that old students are leaving behind? That could be furniture, that could be stationery, right? It's a real problem. And then what we realized is it's because of that summer break that you can't store, nobody's willing to store or bear the storage cost of all of these items, and no one's buying this and then reselling it. So how do we create this marketplace? So we call this company My Junk. And I still remember, like, we were our tagline was, someone's junk is someone else's treasure or something like that, like something very cheesy. And we were doing flash mobs before they were cool in London. Like, we're getting a bunch of students to do like flash mobs, and when you're in university, a lot of your friends just support you and like they're willing to do anything for you, right?
That's
So
right.
we had we hit a real problem, like probably like, multiple $1 billion at that point, and there was like, real demand for it. But the problem that we started facing was, we had not raised enough money or capital to realize that this storage requires, like, mostly furniture, requires a lot of cost in picking up, disassembling, storing, reassembling. And new students, with the opportunities that they had, were not willing to bear that cost. So you can't really
Mhm.
pass it on if it's a used item. So, what was very funny was one side of the supply problem was very easily solved. Lots of people want to get rid of their stuff. We took it all. And then when these new students came in, because of pricing and because you have options like IKEA or like even cheaper furniture, like we weren't competitive enough and failed miserably, lost a lot of money of our own. We hadn't raised as much, so it was a lot of our own money. Granted, we were all students working like two, three jobs at the same time. It meant a lot. But what this experience really taught me, and it was not the only entrepreneurial experience I've had, and it did not really make me feel like I would never try this again. I absolutely learned a lot, loved it as we were doing it, still believed in it. And it took me to many, many, many other, ideas and many other opportunities I kept trying. And you know what it says? I mean, one of the things that, and Angela Duckworth is really the expert on grit. And one thing I say in
Yep.
my book is I am not the expert on any of these topics, but we bring in insights from all the experts. And one of the things is survivorship, helps improve grit. And also, I think it's your circumstances and opportunities, the way you look at it, your perspective that builds on grit. So, some of the most inspiring stories in my book, that what I realized when I was writing it was, if you have limited options or you see those chances as ones you can't fail on, there are certain individuals, even if they fail the first time, they try a second time and they try a third time and they try a fourth time, and the door finally opens up
That's right.
and you break through. So it's really the way you see it, and that it can keep you can keep going even when it looks like all doors have closed on you.
Yeah, it's good learning. I like that a lot. It's like lived experience over and over sort of helps you figure out what your next move is in this
Mm.
larger game of life. Question on the current business climate for you. So if we look at where, things stand now, you have, a lot of companies adopting AI. What role should a leader play now in the 21st century with a lot of this technology when it comes to balancing that adoption and human potential. We have a tendency of seeing things now where it's like, hey, we're just going to use AI, you're laid off. How do we move away from that where we basically may say, hey, we're going to use AI and we need your human potential to actually elevate what we're doing here? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going through a curve. Like, we will get to where you are talking about through a lot of mistakes,
Yeah.
but this has happened with every adoption curve. And I think there's two parts to your answer. The first one is it is still table stakes to learn the basics and really stay on top. So I would encourage all business leaders that you have to learn, adapt, and be as competitive as your competitors, which means you can also be hiding and saying, we're going to continue doing things the way we used to. I'll give you like a real example. For example, um, when you were writing emails or proofreading or sending long articles and then summarizing, you don't have to go through that if that's not your primary job. And if you can use AI to do that, you should because your competitors are. But then when it comes to the actual production of something, right? Like if you think about like where most value is added in business, it's really creative.
That's
And
right.
that creative aspect as yet, and I say this now and I say this everywhere in my book, as of now, because we really don't know where AI is going in the future and how human AI is going to become. But as of now, that creative element is still very human. The reason why we pay so much for an Apple phone versus other phones, right? The iPhones is because of the design, because of like the human creativity that went into it, and
Yes.
not just because of the technology. And so, similarly, like I would say that, all leaders should be aware that the if you're in a high value add industry, you can't discount the value and creativity that human beings bring to what you're developing on top of the stacks of AI. So don't just jump to AI as a solution and AI as a replacement. AI as the enabler is a better way of saying it, or AI as like, the amplifier.
There must be a better way to find a job, one without the distractions of an arrogant news feed or all those ridiculous ghost jobs. A place where people can focus on getting jobs without the distractions and build on their collective network. This is why we built Posted Careers. Posted is for serious job seekers, and in 2026, it is time to get serious about your job search. We think of Posted as a utility. We're not designed for endless comments. We don't want you to lose focus when you're looking for a job. We're not about stale jobs either. We clearly label how fresh a job listing is so that you can rest assured that it's a real job that's been posted recently. Also, the posted circle function, you got to check this out. It sort of works like Bumble. People are invited to join your circle. It never gets bigger than 150 connections, and it allows job seekers to tap into a manageable, trusted network to help them with their job search rather than distract them from it. We hope if you're looking to get serious about finding a job this year, you'll get serious and check out Posted.Careers. See you over there. There was an article recently in The Atlantic about what they dubbed the Tinderization of applying for a job. What we have now is a world where you have people using AI for their resumes to generate resumes, pushing those to job listings. And then, of course, companies have so many resumes that they have to filter them using AI. So, my question for you is how do you stand out in a world now where machines are just talking to machines?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think it's so interesting what you're asking because, again, let's draw out the adoption curve. There was a time when very few people used AI and not everybody was comfortable with it and didn't know. If I used AI in that era, I would really stand out because
That's right.
everything would look much more polished, much more research. I mean, I've even done some early tests at this time. Don't want to disclose who it was, but one of the people who reported into me, I wrote them a very nice review using AI when nobody was using it, and then wrote them a very heartfelt message. And I was curious if they would identify that there was a human or it was like AI, and they couldn't. They were just so happy and said that it was one of the best notes they've ever received. This is like early time, right? You move on to where like adoption increases and everybody starts doing it. So now resumes are generated by AI, their cover
Yes.
letters are AI, and then on the other side, the companies are doing exactly the same thing by stopping humans and having AIs test these AIs, right? So it's like AI talking to AI. and then it's lost because the barrier to entry or what used to be discriminators, right? And sometimes like for the right reasons, cannot be there anymore. I'll give you an example. So if someone wrote a really poorly written resume with even, language errors or full stops or just it didn't look very nice, you would very quickly discard that resume, even if the content was great.
That's right.
But if all resumes look the same, are using the same buzzwords, the same long AI dashes, it becomes a bit confusing, and that's not the barrier anymore. Now it's really like, how do you stand out? And I would argue, it's actually being more human. So imagine in this world where, like, in this curve, we move to a point where everybody's using it. Now, what you're trying to do to stand out is, imagine if I could find a direct connection in the company through a LinkedIn connection, a second connection, got an introduction, sent a really nice, got a warm introduction, had a nice conversation with someone, and talked about my passion for the job. I would stand out amongst the thousands of people. Or if I did something extra, and one of the stories in my book is so interesting, the 17-year-old, student at Northwestern that I knew wrote out a pitch for Snapchat and where it should go in the future and emailed it to the CEO of Snapchat, a 17-year-old kid, and then gets a response from the CEO who flies him all the way from Chicago to the headquarters, spends a day with him, offers him a job because his,
Yeah.
his pitch was so well researched, and it was about like where should you invest for Snapchat to be more sustainable and in the future and to be a company that like really builds and grows. So whatever you do that is more human is going to really stand out.
I love that. Let's look at mentorship because I love talking about it. I think younger people they're really yearning for it. And when you talk to them, they're like, "Hey, I need a mentor. I need someone who can sort of advise me," because they're still new to the world. They're still learning. They need apprenticeships as much in-person activation as possible. So if you were 22 years old again, let's rewind, and you were graduating from university, what's the one mindset shift from your book that you would adopt, let's say, that could future proof your career in this age of AI? What would it be?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I would
The
say
Posted Careers
be
podcast.
human.
Don't get
Be
hooked, get
human
hired. Fresh
because,
jobs served
you know,
daily.
for
Check out
thousands of years, like
Posted.Careers.
this is what we know. We build on this trend. So, what it means to use that to our power or our advantage, the skills that make us or truly differentiate us from technology or from anything else, and that has brought us to this point of progress in civilization. And what that means for a student looking for a job or actually stepping into a job is, you know, how do you become someone who builds great relationships at work, who becomes a person who actually becomes a problem solver, who gets things done and is an executor who implements, who can get to the outcome, and is someone who is always raising their hand. So, with a growth mindset, obviously, like, always learning. So, you know, I would say when everybody is telling you to become more like technology, I would say be human.
Love it. The book is titled The Human Edge: How to Thrive in the Age of AI. The author is Sameer Anwar. Sameer, thanks for joining us this week on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
The Posted Careers podcast. Don't get hooked, get hired. Fresh jobs served daily. Check out Posted.Careers.